I was sitting in my cozy living room that afternoon, sipping on a cup of chamomile tea and flipping through an old photo album filled with pictures of my family. The sun streamed through the lace curtains, casting warm patterns on the hardwood floor, and I could hear the distant hum of traffic outside our quiet suburban neighborhood. At 62, as a widow named Elowin, I'd built my life around supporting my son Thorn and his wife Vesper ever since my husband passed. Away 10 years ago, I'd co-signed their mortgage on this very house, helped them furnish it from top to bottom, and spent countless hours babysitting our sweet little granddaughter, Leora, who was just turning 5. It felt good to be needed, to watch Thorn's career as a software engineer take off while Vesper stayed home, managing the household with what I thought was genuine gratitude toward me. Suddenly, the front door burst open with a bang that made me jump, spilling a bit of tea on my lap. In rushed this small boy, no more than 6 or 7, with tousled brown hair and wide, innocent eyes. He didn't hesitate. He ran straight toward me on the couch, his little sneakers squeaking on the floor, and threw his arms around my legs. "Grandma, Grandma, I missed you so much." "Aye," he exclaimed, his voice high-pitched and full of excitement, like he'd known me forever. I froze, my heart pounding in my chest as I stared down at this stranger clinging to me. Who was this child? I'd never seen him before in my life, and yet here he was, calling me Grandma with such conviction. Welcome to Stories of Auntie Maya. I share new life stories here every day, and I'd really appreciate it if you hit subscribe and liked my video. Drop a comment down below telling me where you're watching from and what time it is for you right now. I read every single comment, and it helps me to know I'm not alone in this. Behind him, Vesper appeared in the doorway, her face draining of all color, turning as pale as a ghost. She stood there, frozen like a statue, her hands clutching a grocery bag that started to slip from her fingers. "Finnick, come here right now," she whispered hoarsely, her voice barely audible, but the boy, Finnick, apparently didn't budge. He looked up at me with a big grin, chattering away. "Mommy said we could come visit today. She told me all about your cookies, Grandma. Can we bake some?" I glanced back at Vesper, my mind racing. Her eyes were wide with panic, darting between me and the child, and she finally dropped the bag, spilling apples across the threshold. "Elowin, this isn't what it looks like," she stammered, stepping forward unsteadily, her hands trembling as she reached for the boy. "What do you mean, this isn't what it looks like?" I demanded, my voice sharper than I intended, as I gently pried Finnick's arms from my legs and stood up. The room felt smaller suddenly, the air thick with unspoken tension. Vesper knelt down, pulling the child toward her. "Finnick, sweetie, go wait in the car. Mommy needs to talk to Grandma alone." But Finnick pouted, crossing his arms. "But you said she was my grandma. You promised we'd see her today." Vesper's face crumpled for a split second, a flash of desperation crossing her features before she masked it with a forced smile. "Just go, okay? I'll be right there." The boy huffed but obeyed, trudging back out the door, leaving us in heavy silence. I turned to Vesper, my hands on my hips, feeling a wave of confusion and hurt wash over me. "Explain this, Vesper, right now. Who is that child, and why is he calling me Grandma?" She hesitated, her eyes avoiding mine as she picked up the scattered apples one by one, buying time. He's just a neighbor's kid. Finnick plays with Leora sometimes, and he must have gotten confused. Kids say silly things." But her voice cracked on the last word, and I could see the lie in her eyes, the way her shoulders tensed, the slight quiver in her lip. I'd known Vesper for 8 years, ever since Thorn brought her home from college, and she'd always been poised, almost too perfect. Now that facade was cracking. "No, that doesn't add up," I pressed, stepping closer. He knew my name indirectly, and he mentioned cookies, specific ones I bake for Leora. "You've told him stories about me?" Vesper straightened up, clutching the bag tightly. "Elowin, please, don't make a big deal out of this. Thorn will be home soon, and we can all laugh about it over dinner." But her plea fell flat, my gut twisted with suspicion. I'd poured everything into this family, my savings, my time, my love, after losing my husband. Thorn was my only child, and Vesper had seemed like the ideal daughter-in-law, always thanking me for the help with the house payments or watching Leora so they could have date nights. We'd shared holidays, vacations, even renovated the kitchen together last year. But now this boy's arrival shattered that illusion, making me question every kind gesture. As the door clicked shut behind Finnick, Vesper finally met my gaze, her expression pleading. Okay, fine. He's not just a neighbor's kid, but it's complicated, Ilawan. Promise me you won't tell Thorn yet. My breath caught. Complicated? That word sent alarm bells ringing in my head. Complicated how? Is he yours? She bit her lip, nodding slowly. From before I met Thorn. I never told anyone because I thought it was in the past. Draven, his father, took care of him, but lately, things changed. Her admission hit me like a punch, the room spinning slightly as I processed it. A secret child, hidden all these years while I supported their life together. Why hide it? I asked, my voice rising despite my effort to stay calm. We've been family for years. I deserve to know. Vesper sighed, setting the bag on the counter. And I was scared. Thorn might not have married me if he knew. And you've been so generous with the house, the money. I didn't want to risk losing that. Greed flickered in her eyes for a moment. Or maybe it was fear. I couldn't tell. But it stung, realizing my support might have been part of her calculation. The front door opened again, and Thorn walked in, briefcase in hand, looking tired from work. Hey, Mom. Vesper, what's with the apples on the porch? He chuckled, oblivious to the storm brewing. Vesper shot me a warning glance. Nothing, honey. Just a little accident, but I couldn't let it slide. Thorn, we need to talk. There's something you should know about a boy named Finnick. Thorn's brow furrowed as he set down his bag. Finnick? Who's that? Vesper interrupted quickly. Elowen, please, not now. The tension thickened, and I felt isolated already, standing there between my son and his wife, the weight of this secret pressing down. Little did I know, this was just the beginning of unraveling a web of lies that threatened everything I'd built. As Thorn looked between us, confusion etched on his face. I decided to hold back for the moment. Barely. Fine, but this isn't over, I muttered to Vesper. She nodded gratefully, but her pale face told me she was terrified. That night, as I lay in bed in the guest room, I often stayed over to help with Leora. The boy's words echoed in my mind. Grandma. How many more secrets were hidden in this house I'd helped pay for? I stared at the ceiling, my heartache growing, knowing I had to dig deeper to protect my son. Thorn stood there in the entryway, his tie loosened, and his hair a bit messy from the drive home, glancing between Vesper and me with that puzzled look he gets when he's tired. He picked up one of the stray apples from the floor and tossed it lightly in his hand. Mom, what's going on? You look upset, and Vesper, you're pale. Did something happen with Leora? Vesper hesitated for a long moment, her hands fidgeting with the edge of her sleeve, her eyes darting to the floor before she finally spoke. It's just a neighbor's kid, Thorn. Finnick plays with Leora sometimes, and he got confused. Kids do that. She looked up at him, her voice uncertain, like she was testing the words as they came out. I couldn't stay silent anymore. No, Thorn, it's more than that, I said, stepping forward and crossing my arms. This boy ran in here calling me Grandma, hugging my legs like he knew me. And Vesper just admitted he's hers from before you two met. Thorn's face softened at first, and he turned to Vesper, putting a hand on her shoulder protectively. Mom, I know you're worried, but Vesper isn't like that. Let me handle this. Honey, is there something you need to tell me? Vesper looked down at her hands again, her fingers twisting together nervously, avoiding his gaze. Thorn, it's complicated. Finnick is from a relationship in college way before us. Draven, his dad, takes care of him. I didn't think it mattered now. Thorn stood firm for a second, his posture straight as he rubbed his temples slowly, like he was trying to process it without jumping to conclusions. Didn't think it mattered? We've built a life together, Vesper. 8 years. A daughter. Why keep this from me, from us? Vesper's voice shook as she reached for his arm, her eyes filling with tears. I was scared you'd see me differently. You were so driven with work, and we had this perfect setup here. Alowan helped with everything. The house. Leora, I didn't want to mess it up. Thorn started to pace a little, his steps measured at first, but I could see the confusion etching deeper lines on his face. Mom, how did this come out? The kid just showed up. I nodded, moving to the couch and sitting down, my own legs still feeling unsteady. He burst right in, Thorn. Called me Grandma, mentioned my cookies like Vesper had shared stories. She turned pale when it happened. Vesper perched on the arm of the chair, her body tense, hands shaking slightly as she wiped at her eyes. Finnick wasn't supposed to come inside. Draven dropped him off for a quick visit while I was out. The boy got excited and ran ahead. It was an accident. Thorn stopped pacing and looked at her, his expression shifting from protective to a flicker of disappointment. An accident? So you've been in touch with this Draven guy? For how long? Vesper hesitated again, her voice faltering. Just for co-parenting, pickups, drop-offs. Nothing more, I swear. But I pressed on, feeling the need to uncover it all. Vesper, the boy talked about Mommy's hidden playdates. That doesn't sound innocent. Thorn's shoulders slumped a bit, and he sat down heavily in the chair, rubbing his face with both hands, his voice quieter now. Hidden playdates? Vesper, what does that mean? Vesper's tears started flowing, and she collapsed to the floor on her knees, hands covering her face for a moment before she looked up at him desperately. It's nothing, Thorn. Kids imagine things. We meet at parks sometimes for Finnick. That's all. I don't want to lose you. You mean everything to me. Thorn leaned forward, his hands dropping to his knees, staring at her with a mix of confusion and growing hurt. You've been lying for years. To me, to Mom. She co-signed this house thinking we were honest about everything. How many times have you snuck out for these? Vesper crawled closer on her knees, grabbing his hand, her voice breaking with guilt. I did it to protect us. For stability. Please, believe me, it's just emotional support sometimes. Nothing physical since before we married. Oh, I watched Thorn's face, seeing the internal struggle as he pulled his hand away gently at first, then more firmly. Emotional support? From your ex? I don't know what to think anymore. He stood up again, pacing faster now, his breath coming in short bursts. Call this Draven. Right now. I need to hear it from him. So. Vesper pulled out her phone with trembling fingers, fumbling as she dialed and put it on speaker. A man's voice answered after a few rings. Vesper? Is Finnick okay? Thorn leaned in, his voice steady but edged with tension. This is Thorn, Vesper's husband. We need to talk about the boy. There was a pause, then Draven sounded cautious. Husband? Vesper told me you knew about Finnick. We meet up for him mostly, but yeah, a few times it got more emotional. Vesper's face went even paler, and she hit mute quickly, her hands shaking. Draven, don't say that. But Thorn took the phone, unmuting it. More emotional? What does that mean? Draven sighed. Look, I don't want drama. She's been saying her family knows. It's mostly for the kid, but we've talked about old times. Thorn ended the call, handing the phone back with a defeated posture. His eyes filled with hurt as he looked at Vesper. Old times? You've been sharing feelings with him? Vesper stayed on the floor, sobbing now, her body rocking slightly. It was just talk. I feel guilty, Thorn. I don't want to lose our family, the life we've built. Please forgive me. Thorn sat back down, his head in his hands, the disappointment clear in his slumped shoulders. I wanted to protect you, Vesper, but this, it hurts. I put a hand on his back, feeling his tension. We need the full truth, Thorn. No more hiding. Vesper looked up, her eyes red and pleading. Elowen, you're making it worse. Can't we talk privately? But Thorn shook his head slowly. No. Mom's right. This affects all of us. The argument simmered down, but the air was thick with unspoken pain. Vesper stood up shakily, wiping her face. Give us space tonight, Elowen. I nodded, grabbing my purse, but whispered to Thorn, we'll sort this tomorrow. Stay strong. As I drove home, the streetlights flashing by, I replayed the scene, the gradual crack in Thorn's defense. Vesper's desperate pleas. My heart ached for my son, but the fury toward her grew. She'd built this on lies, and now the family's foundation was shaking. Alone in my apartment, I knew I had to find more evidence. The isolation hit harder, but I couldn't stop now. I got back to my apartment around 7 that evening, the drive home feeling longer than usual with all the thoughts swirling in my head. My place was small, just a one-bedroom in a quiet building downtown, filled with photos of Thorn and Leora on the walls and a few plants I kept alive out of habit. I dropped my purse on the kitchen counter, poured myself a glass of water, and sank into my armchair in the living room, staring at the blank TV screen. The confrontation at the house had left me drained, but sleep wasn't coming anytime soon. Vesper's desperate pleas and Thorn's hurt expression kept replaying, and I couldn't shake the feeling there was more to this. I needed proof, something solid to show Thorn before Vesper twisted the story further. I pulled out my laptop from the side table and opened it up, the screen lighting up my face in the dim room. Earlier, when I'd stayed over at their house last week, I'd noticed Vesper left her tablet charging in the guest room sometimes. She must have forgotten I'd borrowed it once to check recipes, and I'd seen it synced to her accounts. I wondered if I could access anything remotely. Come on, think, I muttered to myself, logging into my email first to see if there were any shared family photos or messages that might hint at something. Nothing jumped out, just the usual birthday cards and holiday plans. But then I remembered the boys' words, Finnick mentioning Mommy's hidden playdates, and Draven's slip on the phone about things getting emotional. That wasn't adding up to just co-parenting. I decided to start simple. I opened a browser and typed in Draven's name, the one Vesper had mentioned. It wasn't common, so a quick search brought up a few profiles. One was a LinkedIn page for a guy in graphic design, living about an hour away, with a photo that looked like he could be in his late 30s. I clicked through, noting his work history, but nothing screamed secret affair. There has to be a connection, I said aloud, leaning back and sipping my water. Then it hit me, Vesper's tablet. She'd linked it to her phone for notifications, and I knew her Apple ID from when we'd set up family sharing for apps years ago. Thorn had insisted on it for sharing calendars. I grabbed my phone and tried logging into the iCloud Find My Device feature, just to see if the tablet was online. Sure enough, it pinged at their house. I couldn't access files directly, but I remembered the tablet had push notifications for messages. If I could get her to leave it unlocked or something. No, that was too risky. Instead, I thought about the genealogy site I'd used once to trace my husband's family tree. It was public, and people uploaded photos and stories. I signed into Ancestry.com, using my old account, and searched for Vesper's maiden name combined with Draven's. A few hits came up, old school records, nothing major, but then a family tree popped up with a branch showing a child named Finnick, linked to Draven as father and Vesper as mother. The tree was set to private, but a preview showed a photo of a baby that looked just like the boy from today. My heart skipped a beat. This is real, I whispered, zooming in on the details, but I needed more. I screenshotted the page and saved it to my desktop. Then I dug deeper, searching public records for birth certificates. Using a free site, I found Finnick's birth record from 7 years ago, listing Vesper as the mother and Draven as the father. No mention of Thorn, of course, since this was before they met. But the address on the record was an apartment in the city where Vesper said she'd lived during college. Why hide this? I asked myself, feeling the isolation creep in as the clock ticked past 8. My apartment felt too quiet. No one to bounce ideas off. Thorn was probably still arguing with Vesper, and I didn't want to call and interrupt. I picked up my phone and texted Thorn. "How are things? Need to talk." He replied almost immediately. "Rough night. Vesper's crying in the bedroom. Leora's asleep. What did you make of that call?" I typed back carefully. Draven sounded like there's history. "Be careful. Love you." He sent a thumbs up, but no more. I set the phone down and went back to the laptop. Now for Vesper's tablet, I couldn't access it fully, but I recalled she'd left it at the house, and maybe I could check shared notes or something. We had a family Google Drive for photos. I logged in there, scrolling through folders. In one labeled Old Stuff, I found scanned documents, utility bills from years ago, and one was a lease agreement for that same apartment, signed by Vesper and Draven together, dated just after Finnick's birth. My hand shook as I printed it out on my home printer, the machine whirring in the silence. This was evidence they lived together back then. But was there more now? I searched Vesper's name with Draven's on social media, using Facebook's advanced search. Her profile was private, but Draven's wasn't fully locked. In his photos, buried in an album from last year, was one of Finnick at a park, and the caption said, "Family Day with the Crew." Tagged was Vesper's account. I clicked through, and though I couldn't see her posts, the tag linked to a comment from her. "Best times." Dated 6 months ago. "Oh, Vesper," I said, feeling a surge of fury. This wasn't old history. I stood up and paced the room, the carpet soft under my feet. My mind raced to the next step. The genealogy site had given me a lead. The family tree owner was a relative of Draven's, maybe an aunt. I messaged her through the site. "Hi, researching family connections. Saw Finnick on your tree. Any details on his mom's side?" It was a long shot, but worth it. While waiting, I checked my email again and saw a notification from the shared calendar app. Vesper had events marked as errands on random afternoons, matching what Finnick called playdates. One was tomorrow. That's it, I decided. Maybe I could follow her discreetly. The genealogy message got a reply quicker than expected. The aunt wrote, "Finnick's a sweet kid. Vesper and Draven co-parent, but they've been on and off. She mentioned her husband's family doesn't know. Why do you ask?" I stared at the screen, my breath catching. "On and off?" This confirmed the emotional stuff Draven mentioned. I replied vaguely, "Just tracing branches. Thanks," and closed the chat. Now I had screenshots, the birth record, the lease, the photo tag, and this message. It was building a picture of ongoing deception. But I felt alone in this, my heartache deepening as I thought of Thorn. I called him, the phone ringing twice before he picked up. "Mom, it's late." His voice was tired. "I know, but I found some things online. Public records show Vesper and Draven lived together after Finnick was born." He sighed. "Mom, that's the past. She admitted that." I pushed gently. "But there's recent stuff. A photo from last year, them at the park as family. And a relative says they're on and off." Silence on the line, then. "Send it to me, but don't do more tonight. We'll talk tomorrow." I agreed, emailing him the files. After hanging up, I sat back, the weight of it all pressing down. Vesper was protecting her secret life, maybe for money or stability, but it was tearing us apart. My fury mixed with isolation no one else knew yet, but with this evidence, I could protect Thorn. Tomorrow I'd dig deeper, maybe use that calendar to follow her. The family's cracks were widening, and I was the only one holding the glue. The next morning, I woke up early in my apartment, the sunlight filtering through the blinds and hitting the stack of printed evidence on my coffee table. I made a pot of coffee, the aroma filling the small space, and sat down with my laptop again, determined to push further. Thorn had texted me late last night after seeing the files I sent, saying he needed time but appreciated the info. I knew Vesper would be spinning her web today, so I had to act fast. I pulled up the reverse phone lookup site I'd bookmarked. It's one of those free ones that pulls public data, and entered Draven's number from the call log Thorn had shared with me. It spit out an address and full name, Draven Harlow, living in a modest apartment complex about 40 minutes away. "This is it," I said to myself, grabbing my keys. I couldn't just sit here. I needed to hear it from him face to face. I drove over there, the traffic light on the highway, my hands gripping the wheel tightly as I rehearsed what I'd say. The complex was older, with peeling paint on the buildings and kids playing in the parking lot. I parked and walked up to Unit 2B, knocking firmly. A man opened the door after a minute, tall, with messy dark hair and a surprised look. "Can I help you?" he asked, eyeing me cautiously. I stood straight, trying to look composed. "Are you Draven Harlow? I'm Alawan, Thorn's mother, Vesper's mother-in-law." His eyes widened, and he stepped back. "Oh, wow. Yeah, come in. Finnick's at school, but we can talk." He led me into a cluttered living room, toys scattered on the floor, and a half-eaten breakfast on the table. We sat on the couch and he offered me coffee, which I declined. Look, I know about last night." He started rubbing his neck. "Vesper called me freaking out after your son hung up." I nodded, pulling out my phone to show him the birth record screenshot. "I found this online. Finnick's yours and Vesper's. But why hide him? And what's this about you two being on and off?" Draven leaned back, sighing deeply. "It's a mess. Vesper and I dated in college, had Finnick unexpectedly. She left when she met Thorn, said he had better prospects, stability. I took full custody, but she visits sometimes. Lately, though, she's been coming around more, saying her marriage is rocky and she misses us." My stomach twisted at that. "Misses you? As in romantically?" He nodded slowly. "Yeah. A few months ago, things got physical again. Just once or twice, but she talked about leaving Thorn if she could secure some money first. Said your family has assets like the house you helped buy. She wanted to make sure Finnick and I were taken care of in a split." I felt the betrayal hit harder, my hands clenching in my lap. She's using my son for money? I co-signed that mortgage thinking they were building a real family. Draven looked guilty, glancing away. I didn't encourage it, but Vesper's always been about security. She stashed Finnick with me to keep her image clean with you guys. No baggage, you know. I stood up, pacing the small room, my shoes clicking on the linoleum. This is unbelievable. Does Thorn know any of this? Draven shook his head. She swore me to secrecy. Said if it came out, she'd lose everything. The house, the life. But after your call last night, I think it's time he knows. I stopped and faced him. Will you tell him, or back me up? He thought for a moment, then nodded. Yeah, I'll talk to him if you want. Finnick deserves better than being a secret. I thanked him, getting his promise to meet later, and left with my mind racing. As I drove back, my phone buzzed. It was Vesper. I answered, keeping my voice neutral. Allowin, we need to talk. Thorn's upset, but I can explain everything. I pulled over into a gas station parking lot, the engine idling. Explain? Like how you've been seeing Draven behind his back? There was a pause on the line. Then her voice came through, tense and low. How do you know that? I smirked to myself, feeling a bit of power shift. I just met with him. He told me about the affair, the physical stuff recently, and how you married Thorn for the stability, for our money. Vesper gasped. That's a lie. Draven's bitter because I left him. I love Thorn. The visits were just for Finnick. But her tone wavered and I pressed on. Then why talk about leaving if you could get assets? The house I helped pay for? She went silent for a second. Then her voice turned pleading. Allowin, please, don't tell Thorn. I did it for the family. We needed the help. You offered it. Finnick was a mistake from my past. A mistake, I shot back, my fury rising. That boy's innocent. You've been exploiting us, hiding him to keep the gravy train going. Vesper's breath hitched. It's not like that. I married Thorn because he was kind, stable. But yes, the financial help was a bonus. Your cosign made our life possible. If this comes out, we'll lose everything. The home. Maybe even Leora in a custody fight. Oh, I gripped the phone tighter. You mean you'll lose it? Thorn deserves the truth. She switched tactics, her voice hardening. If you push this, I'll make sure you never see Leora again. You're just a meddling old woman trying to break us up. That stung, but I held firm. Threaten all you want. I've got evidence now. Draven's willing to confirm it all. The call ended with her hanging up, and I sat there, heart pounding. Back home, I emailed Thorn the details from my meeting with Draven, including a quick audio note I recorded summarizing it. He called me an hour later, his voice shaky. Mom, I just confronted Vesper about this. She admitted the recent visits were more than co-parenting, but swears it wasn't physical. I sighed, sitting at my kitchen table. Draven said otherwise. He's willing to meet you. Thorn paused. Okay, set it up. This is killing me. I thought our marriage was real. I felt his pain through the phone, my own heartache mirroring it. It was for you, son. But for her, it seems like it was about the money, the house. We hung up and I arranged for Draven to come over to Thorn's house that evening. As I drove there later, the sun setting, I saw Vesper's car in the driveway. Inside, the tension was thick. Leora was with a neighbor, thankfully. Thorne greeted me at the door, looking worn out. Draven's on his way. And Vesper was in the living room, arms crossed. This is ridiculous, Elowen. You're turning my past against me. I sat down across from her. It's not the past if it's still happening. The doorbell rang and Thorne let Draven in. He stood awkwardly, nodding to everyone. Look, Thorne, I'm sorry. Vesper and I have history, and recently it crossed lines. She talked about your family's resources a lot, said splitting would be easier with some security. Vesper jumped up. You're lying to save face. Draven shook his head. No. You even mentioned altering some documents to protect assets. Thorne's face paled. Documents? Like what? Vesper sat back down, defeated. Nothing. Just talk. But the room fell silent, the greed exposed. I watched as Thorne processed it, his alliance shifting toward me. Vesper, how could you? He whispered. She looked away, tears starting. I did it for us, for stability, but it rang hollow. As Draven left, promising more details if needed, I felt the probe deepening, the betrayal crystal clear. My isolation eased a bit, with Thorne believing me, but the fury at Vesper's scheme burned brighter. This was escalating, and I knew she'd fight back. That evening, after the meeting with Draven at Thorne's house, I stayed for dinner, but the atmosphere was like walking on eggshells. Leora was back from the neighbors, chattering about her day at preschool, her little hands waving a crayon drawing she'd made. Thorne sat at the kitchen table, pushing his pasta around his plate without eating much, while Vesper hovered by the counter, her eyes red from earlier tears. I helped set the table, placing forks and napkins down carefully, trying to keep things normal for Leora's sake. But inside, my mind was racing from Draven's revelations about the affair and Vesper's greed. Thorne finally broke the silence as Leora ran off to play in the living room. Mom, I looked at those emails you sent. The birth records, the photos. It's a lot to take in. I nodded, sitting across from him and folding my hands on the table. It's hard, I know. But Draven confirmed everything tonight. Vesper's been playing us for the house, the stability. Vesper turned sharply from the sink, drying her hands on a towel. Elowen, that's not fair. I told you Draven's twisting things because he's jealous. Thorne, honey, you know me better than that. Thorne rubbed his temples, looking between us with that same hurt expression from last night. Vesper, Mom's got evidence now. Online stuff. Draven's words. Why didn't you tell me about Finnick from the start? Vesper stepped closer, her voice soft and pleading. Because I was ashamed. It was a mistake in college. I wanted us to have a clean slate. Your mom helped with the mortgage, and I appreciated it, but that doesn't mean I married you for money. I leaned forward, keeping my tone steady. But Draven said you talked about splitting assets if you left. That's not love, that's calculation. Thorne sighed, pushing his plate away. Mom, you're being too harsh. Vesper's my wife. Maybe it's all in the past. I felt a pang of frustration, seeing him defend her still. Thorne, think about Leora and Finnick. We need to confirm everything. Let's do a DNA test on Finnick, anonymously. I can get a kit mailed. Use a hair sample from him next time he's here. Vesper's face hardened and she crossed her arms. A DNA test? Absolutely not. That's invasive, Elowen. You're turning this into a witch hunt. Thorne looked at me uncertainly. Mom, that might be going too far. Vesper says Finnick's from before us. But I persisted, pulling out my phone to show the genealogy message from Draven's relative. See this? It says you two are on and off. A test would prove parentage once and for all. Clear any doubts. Vesper snatched the phone from my hand, scrolling through it quickly before handing it back. This is gossip from some aunt I barely know. Thorne, tell her to stop meddling. Thorne stood up, pacing the kitchen floor, his footsteps echoing. I don't know, Vesper. If it's innocent, why fight the test? I watched Vesper's expression shift from pleading to anger. Because it's humiliating. Your mom shows up with accusations, drags my ex here, and now wants to poke at my son like he's evidence. If you side with her, maybe she shouldn't come around so much. Thorne stopped pacing, turning to her with a frown. What do you mean, Mom's family? She babysits Leora, helped buy this place. Vesper moved to the doorway. blocking the view to the living room where Leora played. Exactly. But if she's going to poison you against me, I can handle things myself. No more dropping by unannounced. I felt the rift widen right there, my role in the family slipping. Vesper, you're restricting my access after all I've done? She nodded firmly. Until this blows over. And those shared family accounts, the Google Drive, the calendar, I'm changing the passwords. You don't need to snoop anymore. Thorne's eyes widened. Vesper? That's extreme. Mom uses those for scheduling babysitting. I stood up, my chair scraping the floor. This is retaliation because I'm getting close to the truth. Thorne, see what she's doing, controlling everything to hide more. Vesper turned to him, her voice rising. No, it's protecting our family from her interference. You always take her side, Thorne. Maybe that's why things got rocky. Thorne rubbed his face, looking defeated. Both of you, stop. I need time. But Vesper wasn't done. She grabbed her laptop from the counter and started typing. There. Passwords changed. Elowen, you can go now. We'll call if we need you. I looked at Thorne, waiting for him to step in, but he just shrugged weakly. Mom, maybe give us a night. I'll look into the DNA kit myself. As I gathered my things, Leora ran in, hugging my legs. Grandma, don't go. I knelt down, kissing her forehead. I'll be back soon, sweetie. Vesper pulled her away gently. Say goodbye, Leora. The door closed behind me, and I stood on the porch, the cool night air hitting my face. My car was parked in the driveway, and as I got in, I texted Thorne. Order the kit. Use this link. It's discreet. He replied, Okay, Mom, sending it to my office. The next few days dragged on. Vesper followed through. No invites to the house, no shared calendar access. I felt cut off, sitting in my apartment staring at old photos of us all together. Thorne called me one evening, whispering like he didn't want Vesper to hear. The kit came. But how do I get Finnick's sample? Vesper's keeping him away now. I thought quickly, pacing my living room. Next family gathering. Her birthday's in 2 weeks. Invite everyone, including Draven if needed. Get a hair from Finnick then. Thorne hesitated. Vesper's planning it small, just us. She's mad at you. I sat down on my couch, the cushion sinking under me. Push for it. Say it's for Leora. Meanwhile, check those changed accounts, maybe from your end. He sighed. I tried. She's admin now, locked me out of some folders. The control was shifting. Vesper turning our digital family ties into weapons. But then the kit results came back a week later. Thorne had snuck a sample from Finnick during a quick park meet Vesper arranged. He called me over to a coffee shop to show me. Mom, it's confirmed. Finnick's Draven's, not mine. But Vesper knew that. Why hide it? I sipped my coffee, the steam rising. Because it exposes her past, her motives. Now we know it's not about the kid being yours. It's about the affair and the money grab. Thorne nodded slowly, his face hardening. You're right. She's been texting Draven behind my back. I saw her phone. Vesper found out about the test somehow, probably from Draven, and called me that night, her voice furious. You sneaky witch. Thorne told me about the DNA. Stay out of our lives. I held the phone away from my ear. It's proof, Vesper. You're losing control. She laughed bitterly. No, you're the one losing. I'm telling relatives you're senile, pushing lies. No more grandma time. The line went dead, and I felt the isolation deepen. But Thorne texted, Don't worry, Mom. I'm on your side now. The rift was wide open, Vesper barring me from the house, controlling accounts, spreading rumors. But with the DNA confirmation, Thorne's doubt turned to anger. He invited me over secretly the next day while Vesper was out. We need to plan, he said, hugging me at the door. This can't go on. I stepped inside, seeing Leora's toys scattered. First, regain those accounts. Then confront her with everything. Vesper walked in unexpectedly, groceries in hand. What's she doing here? Thorne stood tall. Mom's family. Deal with it. She dropped the bags, apples rolling. Not if she's destroying us. The argument exploded, voices overlapping in the kitchen. You've lied enough, Thorne yelled. I did it for us, Vesper shot back. I watched. my heart aching. But the power was shifting. Vesper stormed out, slamming the door. Thorne turned to me. "What now?" I smiled faintly. "We build our case stronger." The next morning, after that explosive argument where Vesper stormed out, I sat at my kitchen table in the apartment, staring at my coffee mug as the steam rose slowly. Thorne had texted me early, saying Vesper hadn't come home yet, and he was worried, but also relieved for the quiet. I picked up my phone and dialed the number of a lawyer I'd looked up online the night before, someone specializing in family law and estate issues. The receptionist answered on the second ring, her voice professional and calm. "Law offices of Harper and Associates, how can I help?" I cleared my throat. Keeping my tone steady, "I'd like to schedule a consultation with Ms. Harper. It's about potential fraud in family assets and a marriage issue." She booked me in for that afternoon, and I hung up, feeling a mix of nerves and determination wash over me. Thorne showed up at my door around noon, his face pale and his hair uncombed, carrying a folder of papers. He stepped inside, hugging me briefly before sitting on the couch. "Mom, I couldn't sleep. Vesper called late, said she's staying at a friend's. But I went through some drawers last night and found this." He opened the folder, spreading out printouts of our family estate planning app screenshots. "Look here, the beneficiary settings. Vesper changed them last month to list herself as primary on the house if anything happens to me. And there's a note about the will, saying she's added clauses for additional dependents." I leaned over, scanning the documents, my finger tracing the altered lines. "Additional dependents? Like Finnick? She's trying to loop him in without telling us." Thorne nodded, his voice low. "Yeah, and she used my login to do it. But I'm the account owner. I can see the edit history. She forged my digital signature somehow." I stood up and paced to the window, looking out at the street below where cars zipped by. "This is fraud, Thorne. We need to lock this down." He rubbed his eyes, looking exhausted. "I know, but she's still my wife. What if we can fix it?" I turned back to him, my hands on my hips. "Fix it? After the lies? The affair? Cutting me off? She's manipulating everything for money. Remember, I co-signed that mortgage. My name's on it, too." Thorne sighed, folding the papers back up. "Okay, what do we do?" I sat down next to him, placing a hand on his shoulder. "I have a lawyer appointment today. Come with me. We'll show her these." "Oh," he agreed, and we drove to the office together, the radio playing softly in the background as we navigated traffic. The lawyer's office was in a sleek building downtown, with glass doors and a waiting area lined with legal magazines. "Miss Harper greeted us promptly, a sharp woman in her 50s with glasses and a no-nonsense attitude. She led us to her conference room, where we sat around a polished table. "Tell me what's going on," she said, opening a notepad. I started, laying out the story from Finnick's arrival to the DNA test and Draven's confessions. Thorne added the details about the affair and handed over the folder. "And these app changes, she altered the estate plan without my full consent," he said, pointing to the edits. Ms. Harper reviewed the documents carefully, her pen tapping the table. "This looks like potential fraud, especially with the forged signature. Since you're co-owner of the account, we can challenge it. And the house, Alowan, as co-signer. You have rights. We could file for an audit or freeze changes pending review." I nodded, feeling empowered for the first time in days. "What about custody for Leora? Vesper's threatened to keep her from me, Miss." Harper leaned back, crossing her arms. "Grandparent rights vary, but with evidence of instability, like the affair and secrets, we could argue for visitation. First, let's send a cease and desist letter to Vesper about the app tampering. It'll put her on notice." Thorne shifted in his seat, looking uneasy. "Will this lead to divorce?" The lawyer met his gaze. "It could, if you want. But start with protecting assets." We discussed fees and signed a retainer, leaving with a plan to email Vesper the letter that day. As we walked to the car, Thorne turned to me. "Mom, this feels real now. Scary." I squeezed his arm. "It's necessary. She's been playing games. Now we play smart." Back at my apartment, I got a call from Vesper while Thorne was in the bathroom. I answered, my voice firm. "What do you want?" She sounded frantic on the other end. "Alowan, Thorne's not picking up. What's going on?" I sat down at the table, glancing at the lawyer's notes I'd taken. "We're handling things. You changed the estate app. That's fraud. She paused. Then her tone turned defensive. I was just updating for the family, including Finnick if needed. I scoffed, standing up to pace again. Without telling us, and with a forged signature, we've seen the history. Vesper's breath quickened. You hacked my accounts? That's illegal. Thorne came out then, overhearing, and I put her on speaker. No, Vesper, it's our shared app. Mom's right, we're sending a legal letter, he said, his voice stronger now. Vesper exploded. A lawyer? You're dragging me through this because of your meddling mom? I'll fight back. Post on social media about how you're both ganging up on me, making me look unstable. I felt a chill, remembering her threat about rumors. Go ahead. But we have proof. The DNA, Draven's statement, the edits. She laughed bitterly. Proof? I'll say you're senile, Elowen. Relatives already think you're overstepping. Thorne cut in. Stop, Vesper. This is about trust. Come home and talk. But she hung up, and moments later my phone buzzed with notifications. I opened Facebook. Vesper had posted a vague status, dealing with family drama. Some people can't let go, feeling unstable and alone. Need support. Comments poured in from cousins and friends, asking if she was okay. Thorne groaned, checking his phone too. She's painting us as the bad guys. I sat down, opening my laptop. This is her counterattack. But we have leverage now, the lawyer's on it, miss. Harper emailed the cease and desist draft, and we approved it. She sent it to Vesper's email, copying us. Vesper texted Thorne immediately. You serious? This could ruin us. He replied, fix the app back, or we proceed. The evening dragged on with more texts flying. Vesper denying, then bargaining. I'll change it back if Elowen backs off, she wrote. But Thorne held firm. No deals. Truth first. Then came the twist. A knock at my door around 8. I opened it to find my neighbor Clara, a tech-savvy woman in her 40s who'd helped me with my computer before. She held a USB drive. Elowen, you mentioned family app issues the other day. I recovered some deleted logs from your shared drive before Vesper locked it. I invited her in, and Thorne joined us at the table. Clara plugged in the drive, showing files. See? She deleted emails about the changes, but here's backups. One's to Draven. Updated the will. Finnick's covered if we split assets. My eyes widened. This is gold. Proof of intent. Thorne nodded. Send it to the lawyer. Clara smiled. Happy to witness if needed. I've seen Vesper act shady around here. As Clara left, I felt the power shift again. Vesper's maneuvers were backfiring. Thorne hugged me goodbye. Thanks, Mom. We're turning this around. I locked the door, sitting alone with the USB, my isolation fading as evidence piled up. But Vesper wouldn't go quietly. I knew that. The legal battle was just starting, and my fury drove me forward. I was back in my apartment the day after meeting with the lawyer, sorting through the recovered logs Clara had given me, when my phone rang with an unknown number. I hesitated but answered, figuring it might be Ms. Harper with updates. Instead, Vesper's voice came through, low and urgent. Elowen, we need to meet. Alone. No Thorne, no lawyers. There's a coffee shop near your place. Be there in an hour. I gripped the phone, glancing at the stack of evidence on my table. Why? So you can threaten me more? She paused, then said, No, I have something for you. Something to make this go away. Her tone had a desperate edge, but I sensed a trap. Still, curiosity won out. Fine. But if it's another lie, I'm walking. She hung up without responding, and I sat there for a minute, my heart racing. I grabbed my purse and headed out, the short walk to the coffee shop giving me time to think. The place was busy, with people chatting over lattes and laptops clicking away. I spotted Vesper in a corner booth, her hair pulled back and dark circles under her eyes. She waved me over, a forced smile on her face. I slid into the seat across from her, keeping my bag close. All right, Vesper. What's this about? She leaned in, glancing around before pulling an envelope from her jacket. Look, I know things have escalated. The lawyer letter, the app changes. It's all a misunderstanding. But I want to end this. She pushed the envelope toward me. There's $5,000 in there. Cash. Take it, drop the investigation, and convince Thorne to back off. We can go back to normal. I stared at the envelope, not touching it, feeling a surge of outrage. A bribe. You're trying to buy my silence. Vesper nodded quickly, her hands fidgeting on the table. Call it what you want, but think about it. You get money, I keep my family, and no one gets hurt more. Thorne doesn't need to know everything. I leaned back, crossing my arms. Everything? Like how you altered the estate app to include Finnick? Or the affair with Draven? We've got the deleted logs now, Vesper. Emails to him about splitting assets. Her face paled, just like when Finnick first ran in. How did you? Those were private. I shook my head. Not when they're in our shared drive. My neighbor recovered them. It's over. Vesper reached across the table, grabbing my wrist lightly. Please, Alawan. I did it for security. Thorne's job is good, but with 2 kids, Leora and Finnick, I needed a backup. The house you co-signed, the will changes. It was just planning. I pulled my hand away, my voice rising a bit. I'm planning to take what's ours. You married him for the stability, hid Finnick to keep the image clean, and now this bribe from some secret account. She glanced around again, lowering her voice. It's from savings I had. Hidden, yes, but mine. Take it, and I'll fix the app back. No more drama. I stood up, leaving the envelope on the table. No deal. This proves your greed. But as I turned to leave, I remembered the smart home camera in Thorne's house. I'd helped install it years ago, and it was linked to my app for remote access. Wait, this meeting wasn't at home, but maybe I could use something similar. Vesper followed me out to the sidewalk, the envelope still in her hand. Wait, Elowen, don't do this. You'll regret it. I stopped and faced her, pulling out my phone discreetly. Regret exposing you? No. But let's record this for the lawyer. I hit the voice memo app, holding it up. Say it again. The bribe, the hidden account. Vesper's eyes widened, and she swatted at the phone, but I stepped back. You sneaky, fine, yes, it's a bribe. From my online savings. Happy? Now take it. She shoved the envelope into my hands, and I let it drop to the ground. Cash spilling out slightly. People nearby stared, but I kept recording. This is you trying to silence me, Vesper. Admitting the greed. She scooped up the money, her face flushed. You'll pay for this. Thorne will see you're destroying us. She stormed off, getting into her car and speeding away. I stopped the recording, my hands shaking as I picked up my phone from where it had fallen. Back at my apartment, I listened to it again, the audio clear enough to catch every word. This changes everything, I muttered, emailing it to Ms. Harper and Thorne. Thorne called me right away, his voice tense. Mom, I just got your email. She tried to bribe you. With cash from a hidden account? I sat on my couch, replaying the scene in my mind. Yes, $5,000. Said it was from secret savings, to make me drop it all. He sighed heavily. I can't believe this, but the recording, it's damning. Ms. Harper says it strengthens our case. I nodded to myself. Good. Now we use it. That evening, Thorne set up a virtual family conference on Zoom, inviting extended relatives, aunts, uncles, even some cousins who'd seen Vesper's social media posts. I joined from my apartment, my webcam showing my serious face. Thorne started the call, his screen sharing the estate app screenshots first. Everyone, thanks for joining. We've got family issues to discuss. Vesper's been changing documents behind our backs. Vesper was on the call too, her face popping up in a small window, looking composed at first. This is ridiculous, Thorne. Elowen's blowing it out of proportion. Relatives chimed in, confused voices overlapping. What's going on? Asked Aunt Muriel. Is everything okay with Leora? I spoke up, my voice steady. No, it's not. Vesper hid a child, had an affair, and tampered with our estate plan to grab assets, like the house I co-signed. Gasps echoed through the speakers. Vesper interrupted. Lies. She's meddling because she hates me. Thorne shook his head on camera. No, Vesper. We have proof. The DNA, Draven's statement, the logs. Then he played the bribe recording, the audio filling the call. Vesper's voice rang out. Take it and convince Thorne to back off. It's from my online savings. The chat exploded with messages. What? That's bribery. Vesper's face turned red. That recording's illegal. Alawan tricked me. Emotions boiled over as relatives reacted. Uncle Ray said, Vesper, this sounds bad. Why hide money? Cousin Lisa added. And the affair. Thorne, are you okay? Thorne looked straight into the camera. No, I'm not. But seeing this, the bribe, it's clear now. You've been manipulating us for money, Vesper. Vesper slammed her fist on her desk, visible on screen. You all gang up on me. Alawan started this with her snooping, but Aunt Muriel cut in. Vesper, the recording speaks for itself. That's not right. I watched as the tide turned, relatives nodding in agreement. Thorne, protect yourself, said Uncle Ray. Vesper tried to rally. This is edited. Don't believe her. But Thorne muted her briefly. No, it's real. Mom recorded it fairly. When he unmuted, Vesper was crying. Fine. I offered money to stop the pain. But I love you, Thorne. Shook his head. Love doesn't bribe or hide secrets. The call ended chaotically, relatives logging off with promises to call Thorne later. Vesper stayed on, glaring. You'll regret this exposure. Thorne ended the call, then texted me, Mom, that flipped it. I see her deceit now. Loyalty's with you. I leaned back in my chair, the recording still open on my laptop. The reversal hit hard. Vesper's bribe backfired, turning the family against her. My fury fueled the disdain building, but heartache lingered for Thorne. Still, we had the upper hand now. I sat in the mediator's office that afternoon, the air conditioning humming softly overhead, while sunlight slanted through the blinds onto the long conference table. Thorne was next to me, fiddling with his tie, and across from us sat Vesper, her arms crossed tightly over her chest. The mediator, a neutral woman named Ms. Ellis in a crisp suit, arranged her notes and looked at all of us. We're here to discuss the family disputes before any court involvement, she said evenly. Alawan, Thorne, you've brought evidence. Vesper, you've requested this meeting too. I nodded, pulling out my folder with the DNA results, the bribe recording transcript, and the estate app logs. Yes, we have, I replied, sliding the papers across the table. This shows Vesper's scheme, hiding Finnick, the affair, tampering with our assets. Vesper leaned forward, her eyes narrowing at me. That's all twisted, Miss Ellis. Alawan's been pushing this narrative to break us up. The DNA? It's just confirming Finnick's from my past, nothing to do with Thorne. Thorne shook his head, his voice firm. But you hid it, Vesper. And the recording, you tried to bribe Mom to stay quiet. Ms. Ellis picked up the transcript, reading it silently for a moment. This does mention a hidden account and offering money to drop the investigation, she noted, looking at Vesper. Care to explain? Vesper shifted in her seat, glancing at the extended family members we'd invited. Aunt Muriel and Uncle Ray sat quietly at the end of the table, their faces serious after the Zoom call revelations. It was a desperate move, Vesper admitted, her voice cracking a little. I panicked. But the estate changes? I did it to protect our family, including Finnick, if things went south. I stood up slowly, walking to the projector we'd set up earlier with Ms. Harper's help. Protect? Let's show everyone, I said, clicking on the laptop to display the app screenshots. The screen lit up with the altered beneficiary clauses, highlighting Vesper as primary and adding Finnick subtly. You forged Thorne's signature digitally, I pointed out, my finger jabbing at the edit history. And the emails to Draven about splitting assets, here they are. The room murmured, Aunt Muriel whispering to Uncle Ray. Vesper jumped up, her chair scraping back. Those are private. How dare you expose them like this? Thorne turned to her, his expression hard. Private? This affects our whole family, Vesper. The house Mom co-signed, our savings. You are planning to take it all. Ms. Ellis raised a hand for calm. Let's hear from the witnesses. Draven, you were invited. The door opened, and Draven walked in, looking uncomfortable in a button-up shirt. He sat down next to Uncle Ray. Yeah, I'm here, he said, nodding at me. Vesper and I had the affair recently, like I told Alawan. She talked about the assets a lot, said if she left Thorne, she'd need security for Finnick and me. Vesper's face twisted in anger and she pointed at him. You're lying to get back at me. We co-parented, that's all. Draven shook his head. No, Vesper. You even sent me app screenshots of the changes. I have them on my phone. He pulled out his device, showing Ms. Ellis a message thread. She scanned it and passed it around. This matches the logs, she confirmed. Aunt Muriel spoke up then, her voice steady. Vesper, we've seen the bribe recording too. Offering money from a secret account. That's not right. Uncle Ray nodded. And spreading rumors about Eloan being senile? We know her. She's sharp. This looks like greed to me. Vesper slammed her hand on the table, tears streaming down her face now. Greed. I did everything for stability. Thorn, you were always working, and Eloan hovered like she owned us. The house, the help, it was all to build something. But yes, I wanted a piece if it fell apart. Thorn stared at her, his fists clenched on the table. A piece? You mean everything? The will clauses you added cutting me out partially for Finnick? I flipped to another slide, showing the full tampered will document we'd uncovered with the lawyer's audit. Here she altered it to favor herself, an additional dependence, meaning Finnick, while reducing Thorn's share. The mediator leaned in, her pen scratching notes. This could be fraud, Vesper. Forgery in estate planning is serious. Vesper erupted, standing fully now and pacing behind her chair. Fraud, I admit it. I changed things because I saw the cracks. Thorn, your mom pushed you against me from the start. The affair. It was emotional at first, then more because I felt alone. But the money, yes. I hid savings online, stashed from side gigs to protect myself. $5,000 was nothing compared to what I'd lose in a divorce. I stepped closer to the table, my voice rising to match hers. Lose? You mean what you'd steal? We've got the cease and desist ignored, the bribe on tape, Draven's proof. This ends now. Thorn stood too, facing her directly. Vesper, I wanted to believe you, but this, planning to take the house, involving Finnick and our assets, it's over. I'm filing for divorce. Vesper stopped pacing, her eyes wide with shock. Divorce? After everything? You can't do this in front of them. Ms. Ellis intervened. This mediation is to resolve, but with this evidence, court might be next. Aunt Muriel added softly. Vesper, own up. We can help with counseling, but the lies stop. Vesper turned on her, furious. Help? You're all against me because of her. She pointed at me again. Eloan, you win, but I'll fight for Leora. Custody, support, and the house? Half is mine. Thorn shook his head. Not with fraud proven. Ms. Harper says we can contest it all. Draven cleared his throat. Vesper, for Finnick's sake, stop. I'll co-parent fairly, but no more schemes. Vesper sank back into her chair, covering her face with her hands. Fine. I admit the greed. The hidden account was for emergencies, but yes. I thought of using it to start over with Draven if needed. The will changes, I did them alone. Forged the signature because Thorn was distant. The room fell silent, the weight of her confession hanging heavy. Ms. Ellis nodded. That's a start. We can mediate terms, reverse the app changes, disclose the account. But Thorn looked at me, then back at her. No mediation. With this, I'm done. Vesper lifted her head, glaring through tears. You'll regret stripping me of everything. I met her gaze. No, Vesper, you did this to yourself. As the meeting wrapped, relatives hugged Thorn and me outside, whispering support. You did right, Uncle Ray said, patting my back. Draven left quietly, promising to stay in touch for the kids. Vesper stormed to her car alone, slamming the door. Thorn and I drove home together, the evidence folder between us. Mom, that was intense, he said, gripping the wheel. But seeing her admit it, it's a relief. I nodded, watching the streets pass. Yes, but she's cornered now. Expect more fight. Back at the house, Leora ran to us and I held her tight, my role secure again. The showdown had stripped Vesper's power, but the pain lingered in Thorn's eyes. Thorn and I left the mediator's office that afternoon, the weight of Vesper's confession still hanging over us like a dark cloud. We drove back to the house in silence at first, Leora's toys visible in the back seat from where I'd picked them up earlier. Thorne finally spoke as we pulled into the driveway. Mom, I can't believe she admitted all that in front of everyone. The greed, the planning. It's like I never knew her. I reached over and patted his hand before we got out of the car. I know, son. But now we move forward. Ms. Harper says the evidence is solid for the divorce proceedings. He nodded, unlocking the front door, and we stepped inside to the familiar smell of the home I'd helped build, the one Vesper had tried to claim. Leora came running from the living room, her small arms outstretched. Daddy! Grandma! Thorne scooped her up, kissing her cheek. Hey, princess. How was your nap? She giggled and pointed to her drawing on the coffee table. I made a picture for Mommy. My heart twisted a little at that, but I smiled and knelt down to look at it. A colorful scribble of a family. It's beautiful, sweetie. Mommy will love it. Thorne set her down and glanced at me. Mom, the lawyer wants us to prepare for the virtual hearing tomorrow. We need to go over the asset division. I followed him to the kitchen, where he pulled out his laptop and opened the estate planning app. Look, I've locked her out completely now. The changes are reversed, but we have to prove the fraud in court. As we sat at the table reviewing the logs and the bribe recording, my phone buzzed with a text from Ms. Harper. Hearing set for 10 a.m. Bring all docs. Expect Vesper to contest custody. Thorne read it over my shoulder. Custody? She wouldn't take Leora from me, would she? I shook my head firmly. She might try, but with the affair and the lies, the judge will see she's unstable. We've got Draven's testimony, too. He leaned back in his chair, rubbing his face. This is messing with my head. Leora needs both parents, but Vesper's actions... I stood up and poured us some coffee from the pot I'd brewed earlier. We'll fight for what's best. Primary custody for you, visitation for her. And the assets, the house stays with us. The next morning, we logged into the virtual courtroom from Thorne's home office, the screen splitting into sections for the judge, Ms. Harper, Vesper, and her lawyer. Vesper appeared on camera, her hair neat but her eyes puffy, like she hadn't slept. The judge, an older man with a stern face, called the session to order. This is a preliminary hearing for divorce and asset division in the matter of Thorne versus Vesper. Ms. Harper, present your case. Our lawyer started strong, sharing her screen with the DNA results. Your Honor, we have proof of infidelity and fraud. The DNA confirms Finnick is not my client's child, yet the respondent hid him to maintain the marriage. Vesper's lawyer interrupted. Objection, that's irrelevant to assets. The judge waved it off. Overruled. Continue. Ms. Harper played the bribe recording next, Vesper's voice filling the speakers. Here the respondent offers cash from a hidden account to silence the petitioner. Vesper leaned into her mic, her voice shaky. That was a mistake, Your Honor. I was scared. Thorne spoke up when prompted. She tampered with our estate app, forging my signature to favor herself and her secret child. The judge reviewed the logs we uploaded. This appears fraudulent. Respondent, explain. Vesper's lawyer coached her quickly off mic. Then she said, I admit the changes, but it was for family protection. No harm done, Ms. Harper countered. Harm. It violated trust in law. We request asset freeze and primary custody for my client. The hearing dragged on, with Vesper's side arguing emotional distress. My client was isolated, pushed by the mother-in-law, her lawyer said, glancing at me on screen. I spoke when the judge addressed me. Your Honor, I supported them financially, co-signed the mortgage, but Vesper exploited it. Draven joined as a witness via link, confirming the affair. She discussed taking assets for us. Vesper broke down on camera. Draven, how could you? He shrugged. For the truth. Finnick needs stability too. The judge nodded, making notes. Based on evidence, I'm ruling preliminary asset freeze on joint accounts. Custody, temporary primary to the petitioner, supervised visitation for respondent. Fraud charges pending review. Vesper's face crumpled, and she muted herself briefly, wiping tears. When she unmuted, her voice was bitter. This isn't fair. I built this family too. Thorne looked at her through the screen. You broke it, Vesper. The lies, the greed. It's done. The judge adjourned, and Ms. Harper texted us, strong start. Assets secured for now. Thorne closed the laptop, turning to me with a sigh. Mom, that's a relief. The house is safe. I hugged him, feeling the tension ease a bit. Yes, and Leora's with us. But then came the twist. My phone rang with Draven's number. I answered, putting it on speaker. Allowin' Thorne, Vesper just called me upset. But I wanted to say, for Finnick, I'm open to co-parenting digitally. Schedules via app, video calls, no more secrets. Thorne raised an eyebrow. Co-parenting? With Leora, too. Draven chuckled softly. If it helps the kids connect as half-siblings. Vesper agrees, says it's better than fighting. I glanced at Thorne, seeing his surprise. That's unexpected, but maybe good for them. Thorne nodded slowly. Yeah, let's set it up. Leora could use a brother. We ended the call, and Thorne stood up, stretching. This softens things a little. The pain's still there, but at least the kids win. I walked to the window, looking out at the yard where Leora played. It does. Vesper's actions led to this mess, but co-parenting shows some maturity from Draven, at least. Thorne joined me watching her. Mom, thanks for pushing. Without you, I'd have lost everything. Later that evening, as Leora ate her snack at the kitchen table, Vesper texted Thorne, accept the ruling, but I'll fight for fair share. He showed me, and I replied for him. Fair means honest. No more games. She didn't respond, but Ms. Harper called with updates. Fraud investigation starting. Her hidden accounts under scrutiny. Could lead to charges. Thorne hung up, looking at me. She might lose more than she thought. I nodded, pouring milk for Leora. Consequences of deception. But we focus on healing now. Leora looked up innocently. Is Mommy coming home? Thorne knelt down. Mommy's staying elsewhere, but you'll see her soon, and maybe meet Finnick. Her eyes lit up. A brother? I smiled, the heartache easing as I saw hope in her face. Yes, sweetie. Family's changing, but we're strong. Over the next few days, the legal wheels turned, assets frozen. Vesper forfeiting claims in a signed agreement to avoid worse charges. She moved to a small apartment, her lawyer negotiating minimal support. Thorne got full custody of Leora, with Vesper's visits supervised. Draven stepped in positively, setting up weekly video calls where Finnick and Leora waved at each other on screen. Hi, sister, Finnick said one time, making Leora giggle. Thorne watched, his expression softening. This isn't what I planned, but it's better, I agreed, helping him reorganize the house, removing Vesper's things, securing the deed fully in our names. The emotional reckoning hit during quiet moments, like when Thorne found an old photo of their wedding. I loved her, Mom. I hugged him. You did. But now you know the truth. As the dust settled, I reflected in my journal one night, the pen scratching paper in the dim light. Vesper's greed had nearly destroyed us. But our evidence, the DNA, recordings, logs, turned it around. Draven's cooperation was the surprise, easing the pain by connecting the kids. It underscored how deception fractures families, but facing it rebuilds them stronger. Thorne knocked on my door then. Mom, Leora's asleep. Want tea? I closed the journal. Sure. Let's talk about the future. A few weeks after the virtual hearing wrapped up, I stood in the kitchen of the house, stirring a pot of soup on the stove while the aroma of garlic and herbs filled the air. Thorne walked in from work, setting his briefcase down on the counter with a tired but genuine smile. Mom smells amazing in here. Leora's in the living room, drawing again. I turned off the burner and wiped my hands on a towel, glancing at him. Good day at the office? Any updates from Mids? Harper? He nodded, pulling out a stool and sitting down. Yeah, the final papers came through. Divorce is official. Vesper signed off on everything. No contest after the fraud investigation heated up. I poured us both a glass of water and handed him one. So the assets? The house? Thorne took a sip and set the glass down. All secured. Your cosign stays, but it's fully in my name now. No splits. And her hidden account, they froze it. Turned out she had more stashed than we thought. From undeclared side income, prosecutors looking at charges for forgery and tax evasion. I leaned against the counter, feeling a wave of relief wash over me as I watched Leora through the doorway, her crayons scattered on the floor. Charges? She could go to jail? Thorne shrugged, his expression mixed with sadness and resolve. Possibly. Her lawyers negotiating a plea, community service, fines. But she's relocating to a small place across town, penniless after the freezes and legal fees. I nodded slowly, picturing Vesper in her new reality, stripped of the life she'd schemed for. She brought it on herself, the greed, the lies, it all caught up. Thorne stood up and hugged me briefly. Thanks to you, Mom, your vigilance saved us. Without the evidence, the recording, the logs, we'd have lost half. I patted his back and pulled away. We did it together. Now let's focus on the good. Leora ran in then, holding up her latest masterpiece, a stick figure family with me, Thorne, her, and even a small boy labeled Finnick. Look, Grandma, our new family. I knelt down to her level, taking the paper and smiling wide. It's perfect, sweetie. You included your brother. Thorne ruffled her hair. Yeah, Draven's bringing him over this weekend for a play date. Video calls have been great, but in person will be better. I stood up, hanging the drawing on the fridge with a magnet. I'm glad Draven stepped up. Co-parenting fairly, no drama. Vesper even agreed to the schedule in the custody deal. Thorne grabbed his phone from his pocket as it buzzed. Speaking of text from her, pick up Leora at 10 a.m. Saturday, be on time. He rolled his eyes but typed back quickly. At least it's civil now. Supervised visits mean no surprises. We sat down for the soup, the steam rising as I ladled it into bowls. How are you feeling about it all? Thorne? The emotional side? He blew on a spoonful and looked thoughtful. It hurts, Mom. 8 years down the drain. But seeing her admit the greed in mediation, it freed me. No more doubts. I reached across the table and squeezed his hand. You deserve better. And Leora, too, she piped up from her booster seat. Daddy, when can I see Mommy? Thorne smiled at her gently. Soon, Princess. Saturday. I watched them, my heart swelling with a mix of heartache for what was lost and joy for what remained. We've rebuilt stronger, no more secrets lurking. The next day I met with Aunt Muriel and Uncle Ray at a local cafe, the clink of cups and chatter around us. Muriel hugged me as I sat down. Ailawan, you were brave through all this. How's Thorne holding up? I stirred my tea, the spoon tinkling against the cup. Better each day. The divorce finalized yesterday. Uncle Ray leaned in, his voice low. And Vesper? Heard she's facing charges. I nodded, sipping my tea. Fraud mostly. Her hidden savings got her in tax trouble, too. She's broke now, starting over. Muriel shook her head. She had it all and threw it away for greed. But you protected the family assets. That house is safe. I set my cup down. Yes, and my role in it. No more threats to keep me from Leora. Uncle Ray patted my arm. We're proud of you. If you need anything, call. Back home, Thorne surprised me with a small gathering. Clara the neighbor, Draven with Finnick, and even Miss Harper dropped by briefly. The living room buzzed with laughter as Leora and Finnick played with blocks on the floor, stacking them high. Draven handed me a coffee. Elowin, thanks for including us. Vesper's been quiet, but this co-parenting, it's working. I watched the kids, Finnick showing Leora how to build a tower. It is. They're bonding already. Thorne joined us, clinking his mug against mine. To new beginnings. Spahu, Clara chimed in from the couch. And to your tech skills saving the day with those logs. I laughed lightly. Team effort. But vigilance paid off. As the evening wound down, Draven pulled Thorne aside in the kitchen. Hey man, about Finnick. Vesper wants joint custody down the line, but with charges pending. It's off the table. Thorne nodded. Good. But we'll keep the door open for her visits supervised. Draven shook his hand. Fair. Thanks for not cutting him out. I overheard and smiled to myself, cleaning up plates. Later, after everyone left, Thorne and I sat on the porch, the stars twinkling above. Mom, I feel empowered now, like I can move forward. I leaned back in my chair, the cool breeze brushing my face. You are. And I'm here, fully as Grandma. To Leora and Finnick, too, if it fits. He turned to me. It does. You've earned that. Weeks turned into months, and Vesper's consequences hit full force. Mrs. Harper called one morning as I babysat Leora. Allowant, update, Vesper, pled guilty to fraud. Probation, restitution, community service. She's selling her stuff to pay fines. I put the phone on speaker while Leora colored at the table. No jail, Harper replied. No, but her reputation's shot. Can't work in finance anymore. Thorne walked in from his home office, overhearing. Justice served. I hung up and looked at him. Yes, she's penniless, relocated, learning her lesson. Leora looked up. Grandma, story time. I sat down with her, opening a book. Of course. Once upon a time. That night, alone in the guest room I'd moved in to help full-time, I reflected on it all. The shock of Finnick calling me Grandma. The betrayal unfolding, my fury driving the investigation. It nearly broke us, but vigilance saved our lineage. Thorne knocked softly. Mom, tea? I joined him in the kitchen, the house quiet. How's the future look? He smiled. Bright. Dating again soon, maybe. And you, happy here? I nodded. Empowered. Grandma to two now. We clinked mugs. To us. As I sipped, the pain faded, replaced by peace. Vesper's downfall was deserved, her schemes crumbling under truth. Our family emerged stronger, bonds unbreakable. My dear, if you're watching this and feel your heart growing heavy, then perhaps you are just like me, someone who has endured so much just to keep a home peaceful, someone who stayed silent just so others could feel comfortable. I don't know your story, but if there was ever a time you thought, it's okay, I can take a little more, then please leave me a comment with just one sentence. I have endured. Well, I cannot promise to change everything for you, but I want you to know this. Suffering in silence is not your duty, and staying quiet for too long will make you lose yourself. If today you aren't strong enough to say no, that's okay. Just don't blame yourself. And if this story feels like it's speaking for your heart, please subscribe and stay here with me so that every day I can remind you that the person who sacrifices the most also deserves to be treated with kindness. On screen right now, you'll see 2 new stories I think you'll really enjoy. There are many more waiting for you on the channel, so don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell so you never miss one. See you in the next story. Until then, take care of yourself and the people you love. With all my love and respect,